Missionaries kidnapped. The push to free Americans abducted in Haiti. Planned retirements. Learn about the changing face of Congress. Lawmaker indicted. Why Representative Jeff Fortenberry is facing criminal charges. And Click to Pray 2.0. How an updated app can draw you closer to Christ. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this feast of St. Paul of the Cross. I'm Tracy Sable. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is responding to questions about a multi-million-dollar ransom demand by a Haitian gang in exchange for the release of 17 captive missionaries.
We have, in the administration, been relentlessly focused on this, including sending a team to Haiti.
4 days ago, a violent Haitian gang kidnapped a group of 17 Americans and Canadian missionaries with a demand of $1 million per person for their release. A Haitian driver was taken captive along with them. The group was returning from visiting an orphanage when it was abducted. That is according to Christian Aid Ministries. President Joe Biden flew to Pennsylvania today to push his massive spending proposals. One thing several lawmakers want desperately: paid family leave. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has supported similar programs in the past, but whether it makes the final cut remains to be seen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Several Senate Democrats, progressives, and moderates sent President Biden a letter essentially urging him not to ditch paid family leave. They said it has to be included for all workers, for things like caring for a newborn baby or caring for an ailing family member. As President Joe Biden headed off to Pennsylvania pushing his controversial economic agenda, tonight he faces new obstacles. Lawmakers who will not budge on paid family leave. They want 12 weeks, but the president reportedly offering just 4 weeks. One version of family leave now proposed would help low and middle income workers who make $60,000 or less a year. They get full wages for 12 weeks. The pandemic hit working families hard, especially when schools closed and the kids were left home. The pandemic has exposed an acute emergency on top of an ongoing chronic caregiving crisis for working people and employers alike, the senator said in the letter. We cannot emerge from this crisis and remain one of the only countries in the world with no form of national paid leave. And on the vaccine front, the White House COVID-19 response team says it's getting millions of shots ready in case the government approves a COVID-19 vaccine for children ages 5 to 11. There are roughly 28 million kids in that age group. A lower dose of the Pfizer shot should soon get the okay.
Kids have different needs than adults, and our operational planning is geared to meet those specific needs.
Now, back to the president's proposed economic agenda. If a deal is struck, it looks like one thing that will not be a part of it is 2 years of free community college. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
More House Democrats have announced their retirements this week. They are stepping away ahead of next year's midterm elections. Republicans hope that they can regain control. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
House Democrats will head into next year's midterm election trying to hold on to their slim 4-seat majority as several major players plan to step down. Meanwhile, Republicans are hoping the current crises, such as the border and the economy, will keep voters coming their way.
Families are already revolting, and you can see with swing voters how they've shifted away from President Biden, and that's just after 10 months. And he's spent trillions of dollars already. The problem is he wants to double down and go even further towards the big government socialist left.
Just this week, 3 more House Democrats, David Price, Mike Doyle, and Budget Committee Chair John Yarmuth, announced that they are leaving next year. They join a list of 5 others. Several others are leaving to run for other offices. On the other side of the Hill, the GOP is defending more territory than Democrats, including 5 open seats. but GOP leadership tells me they are ripe to take control.
I think that they are so overreaching that the American people is going to be a huge backlash against that, and we just need to make sure that we recruit good candidates and work hard. But I think the American people are going to want to check and balance against this crazy agenda, and the best way to do that is to flip the House and the Senate in the 22 elections.
With moderate and progressive Democrats fighting over the cost of President Biden's agenda, Senator Thune tells me he's confident the GOP can take advantage of the discord.
So we're hopeful. I think the political environment is going to be good. But unfortunately, until then, we've got to try and keep things on the rails and keep them from putting policies in place that would be incredibly harmful to the country and to, I think, our values.
It's not all bad news for Democrats. The party's candidates are still raking in massive amounts of cash. And the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee recently announced that it had outraised the NRCC by $10 million in the third quarter of the year. Democratic strategists tell me, although their party is trying to do big things, all the average voter sees is Washington's political gridlock. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
A federal grand jury has indicted Catholic Republican Congressman Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska on charges that he lied to federal investigators about illegal campaign donations from a foreign source.
About 5.5 years ago, a person from overseas illegally moved money to my campaign. I didn't know anything about this and used some other Americans to do so.
In a YouTube video released by the congressman, he denies any wrongdoing. He is charged with 1 count of scheming to falsify and conceal material facts and 2 counts of making false statements to federal investigators. Congressman Fortenberry has agreed to appear before a judge in Los Angeles next Wednesday. And joining me now is Shannon Mullen, editor-in-chief of Catholic News Agency. Shannon, welcome back. Good to be with you. This is a developing story, as you know, but the charges are serious here. What's striking is that he and his staff are claiming that they had no idea where these campaign funds came from. Does that all surprise you? And also, what more do we know about this donor?
Yeah, it is surprising and very strange in many respects, one of which is that the news really came from Fortenberry himself. He tried to get ahead of this and has gotten ahead of this. So that was unusual. The fact that this stems from something, as he said, perhaps 5.5 years ago, also unusual. The timing, of course, is critical. Fortenberry, as you mentioned, is a Catholic lawmaker, a Republican. He's been outspoken on pro-life issues. Obviously, that issue is front and center right now in the Congress. He's also been a strong advocate for persecuted Middle Eastern Christians. And as you know, they need all the advocates they can get. So on both counts there, this is a potentially very serious, not only for him, but for those who care about these issues that he's been out front on. As far as the donor, we know very little about him. He has run into trouble with the federal Justice Department on campaign contributions. He's of Nigerian and Lebanese descent. He's a billionaire, which is interesting also because as far as some of these donations, we're talking about relatively small amounts of money, presumably to used to gain influence. Small amounts, not for you and I, but perhaps for a billionaire. So there's still a lot of questions on this story that have yet to come out to be answered.
Yeah, indeed. You know, he's not the first politician in recent memory who has, gotten into trouble over questionable donations. Based on what we have seen in the recent past, Shannon, what do you think happens next?
Well, the next move, I think, is with the Justice Department and, how is this part, among the questions that we have, is this part of a much bigger investigation? So that's really one of the main questions to be answered. And, the other for Fortenberry himself, what kind of potential penalties is he looking at here? You always wonder with these kinds of cases, as if there is a larger investigation that's underway here related to campaign donations, or just something that the FBI bumped into.
Yeah. And, another thing I want to talk about, kind of switching gears along here, is the Archbishop of Liechtenstein, as you know, that tiny European country, which is significantly smaller than the state of Rhode Island, has said that he won't participate in the Synod on Synodality. He cited a fear that the two-year process risks becoming too ideological. Talk to us about the significance of that announcement, and what do you think this signals?
It is significant. First of all, yes, smaller, about the size of Rhode Island. Really, it's smaller in some respects from the suburban New Jersey community where I live. 62 square miles, about a population of around 40,000, which is actually less than live in my town. So it's a very small state. It is 75% Catholic, so we're talking about maybe 30,000 total Catholics. So the dimensions here are significant, I think, because one of the questions is if a relatively smaller and one would think more cohesive Catholic community as Liechtenstein is balking at this process, either for logistical reasons or ideological reasons, what does that portend for larger dioceses? So I think that's interesting. It also points to a larger theme, I think, that's behind the synodality process. On the one hand, there's a concern. This is a global consultative process, and on the one hand, there's a concern that minority communities need to have their voices heard on many important issues related to the Catholic Church. On the other hand, there's also a concern that vocal minorities, for example, groups that might be advocating for a liberalization of the Church's sexual morality laws, for example, could predominate in some circumstances. So Liechtenstein might have unique circumstances on top of that that I'm not acquainted with, to be frank. But it is an interesting development at this early stage of the synodality process.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we will be keeping our eye on that for sure. Shannon, thank you so much for your time and for weighing in. Shannon Mullen, Editor-in-Chief of Catholic News Agency. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Tracy.
A deadly violence erupted in Syria today, where civil war still persists. A government rocket attack against a suspected rebel town killed 10 people and injured at least 20. The shells hit during the morning in a populated area. Separately, during rush hour in Damascus, a bus carrying Syrian soldiers was bombed, killing 14 and injuring several others. While facing a spike in coronavirus, Russia is mandating a paid week away from work.
Ваше предложение, уважаемые коллеги, об объявлении.
President Vladimir Putin made that announcement during a video conference today. The order applies to state workers and unspecified professions from October 30th to November 7th. Russia has recorded more than 1,000 deaths from COVID-19 in the last day. Well, Queen Elizabeth II is away from her public schedule for a couple of days. Following medical advice, the Queen has canceled a visit to Northern Ireland and is taking the time off, however, reluctantly. The elder monarch was in public recently with a rare use of a cane. The palace says her rest days are not COVID-related and that the Queen is in good spirits. Coming up, a closer look at the crisis with the supply chain and whether an end is in sight. While the trucking industry is now short a record high 80,000 drivers. That is according to the head of American Trucking Associations, a major industry trade organization. The lack of drivers is a big factor in the supply chain crunch facing the country. President Joe Biden previously ordered ports to stay open 24/7. However, they cannot operate at full capacity because there aren't enough trucks to load goods. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Dr. Anthony Cannizzaro, Associate Professor of International Business and Strategic Management at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America. Dr. Cannizzaro, welcome. Great to be with you. Many people are still really confused as to why we're having these supply chain issues now and why something wasn't done sooner to resolve this. Can you tell us why both businesses and policymakers still appear to be scrambling over solving the supply chain issue?
Yes. Well, first, it helps to understand exactly what we're talking about. So the supply chain is essentially the process from sort of taking things out of the ground, adding value to them all the way to the end consumer. And the world we live in, we have a global supply chain. So these different parts of the process take place all around the world. As a consequence of outsourcing and specializing in different countries, different types of production, we enjoy a very sort of efficient supply chain. However, we've discovered at the same time that this specialization has not left us with a very resilient supply chain. We never asked the question, what happens if an entire country's production was knocked offline? And that's exactly what happened in the pandemic. We sort of had a 1-2 punch. Supply of many goods was constrained during lockdowns, and companies around the world failed to return to our previous levels of productivity due either to ongoing restrictions from government policy or labor shortages. And at the same time, we've sort of had odd fluctuations in demand where demand for some goods surged while demand for other goods fell. So this combination of supply issues and demand distortions are sort of now rippling through supply chains, what we call in business the bullwhip effect. And this has demonstrated just how fragile our global supply chain is and how difficult it is for both government and business to respond.
Yeah, that's a really great explanation there. You may have heard this, not sure, but it's been in the news yesterday. White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki was questioned about the supply chain issues and really kind of made an interesting remark when the reporter basically said that people were having trouble getting items, including treadmills, to which Psaki responded, the tragedy of the treadmill that was delayed, kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer there, that said it isn't just treadmills that are being caught up in this supply chain crunch. It's also basic items like food. Where do you see this heading, and what are the long-term implications?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's not just treadmills. We have, I think, over 100 container ships now outside the port of Los Angeles. Shipping prices have raised over 500% since this time last year, which is going to impact both the prices and supply of lots of different types of goods. And the biggest negative of this is going to be inflation, right? So we're going to see increased prices across the board. So not just supply issues, but going forward, we have this experience that some of these changes in prices will be sticky. So we're just going to be paying more for everything. Just to give a positive side of this, hopefully this results in us diversifying our supply chain and making it more resilient, and then decoupling us from China, a relationship with a lot of people consider very asymmetric.
Yeah, and before I let you go, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'm wondering, a lot of people are worried about the holidays. We've been hearing a lot about that supply chain issues affecting what's available in stock. Can you talk to us about how that impacts or could impact the price? As you mentioned, we're already seeing a rise in price due to inflation.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see both prices rise and a lack of availability, right? And so this is going to be, unfortunately, a mutually sort of a vicious cycle, right? Mutually self-reinforcing, because we've seen in conjunction with the supply chain issues, sort of a new movement in labor where strikes, say at John Deere, are going to, workers are striking because of inflation, right? And this is in effect going to raise the cost of the supply chain, and it's going to further create inflation, right? So what we're going to end up seeing happen is, say, a farmer can't get equipment from John Deere, and they're going to then have to delay, and that will increase the price of food, and that's going to ripple through the entire supply chain to all of us. you're going to see something equivalent to this in, I think, almost every category of goods that we source, both here domestically because of what's happening in the labor movement here and abroad.
Well, Dr. Canizaro, thank you so much for your time and for weighing in and explaining all of that for us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Up next, the Vatican has released an update to the Pope Francis smartphone prayer app. And a young visitor interrupts the Holy Father's weekly gathering at the Vatican. We'll explain. The Vatican has released an update to the Pope Francis prayer application, a new and updated version of the Pope's prayer app. Click to Pray 2.0 was presented yesterday by the Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network. The app offers a variety of ways to pray with the Holy Father on a daily basis. The update is also aimed at the upcoming Synod on Synodality. Juan Ignacio Castellero, project manager for Click to Pray, is here now to tell us more. Juan, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations on the launch of the new app. Can you tell us, what's new and why did you release it now?
Well, hello. Thank you for this interview. It's a pleasure for me to have this space to talk to you about this new app that we launched yesterday here in the Vatican City, which is the Pope's Prayer app, in which Pope Francis can share with many people his prayers and with all the world. It's a new app. Well, it's not the new app because it's a new version, but it's very different to the previous one because we have added different functionalities and tools to help people praying with the Pope and for the challenges of humanity and the mission of the Church. So we are adding this with this new version, some tools which are the possibility for people to have a schedule of prayer in 3 moments every day, which we call with Jesus in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, with different praying tips also to help people to go deeper in the prayer. And also a very interesting tool of our app in this new version will be the School of Prayer, that I think is going to be a very useful tool for every people to have more tools, more resources to pray and go deeper into their own hearts and in the prayer.
That is so exciting. Do you happen to know how many people actually downloaded the app for the first time? And are you expecting more people to download the new version?
Of course, this new version was designed especially to get more people to have a better user experience for many people, especially to the young people. We think that in this from 2016, the first launch of Click to Pray, from up to today, we have reached to 2 million people all over the world in 7 different languages, which is Click to Pray, and also in the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so people can pray with us, with Click to Pray content, and with the Pope in many languages and in many countries. So it's a really good way to spread the mission of the Church and to help people praying for these challenges facing humanity, which is like the heart of our app.
And Juan, before I let you go, for those who are interested, and I know they are, can you tell us where we can find the app?
Well, the app is available on the stores, on Google Play and on the App Store. You can download for free from there. And also we have a website in which you can find the same content. In the website and also in the app, you will find a community in which people can share with many people all over the world in their own languages and from different cultures, their own personal prayers. This is a really good way to share with others the praying and to keep praying for different people all over the world which need many things, and also they thank for many things there. So it's really a great experience to pray together, to pray in network, because this is like one of the missions also for the Pope's Worldwide Prayer Network, which is praying together, praying with the Pope for the challenges of humanity.
Juan, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us about this very exciting project. Juan Ignacio Castellero, project manager for Click to Pray. Thank you again, and God bless you.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, Pope Francis held his usual talk to pilgrims at the Vatican today, but it had a little bit of an unusual beginning.
Porque toda la ley alcanza su plenitud en un solo precepto.
The Holy Father thanked a boy who approached him at the beginning of the event. He said the young visitor reminded all of us to behave like children and not to be afraid to approach the Lord with anything. Pope Francis later spoke about freedom, saying the truest form of liberty comes from serving others rather than giving in to our own selfish desires. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.